Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me today. Culture. What is culture? Is it in relation to tradition, beliefs, lifestyle? According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, culture is defined as a particular society that has its own beliefs, lifestyle, art, etc. So how does culture vary between different civilizations and countries? How does culture affect modern society? And what can we learn from history that can help modern society? These are some questions I'd like for you to think about. Today's presentation will describe the similarities and differences between the Mayan and Inca cultures and how they've impacted today's society. Let's get started with the similarities between the Mayan and Inca culture. There are several similarities between the two, such as material culture, religious beliefs and practices, social culture, and architecture. The two significant similarities are the religious beliefs and their practices and architecture. Both cultures were passionately religious and polytheistic, meaning believing in more than one god, and practiced human sacrifices. Their gods were both in relation to nature. For example, the Mayans believed in the sun, moon, rain, and corn, and they believed in a cyclical way of life. They didn't believe in heaven or hell. Rather, they believed it was a quest to Tamanchuan. Now, as explained by Joshua J. Mark in Ancient History Encyclopedia, they didn't believe in being born and dying. It was through human sacrifice. They would travel through Xibalba, a place of fear, through 13 levels to reach the paradise of Tamanchuan, a place of misty sky where beautiful flowers bloomed. According to Columbia Encyclopedia, the Incas believed in the sun, the god of the weather or thunder, the moon, stars, the earth, and the sea. And the god was foremost among them. In addition, Columbia Encyclopedia states religious beliefs included human sacrifices at times of crises, celebrations and ceremonies, rituals, feasts, fasts were all part of the Inca religion. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first visual aid that shows the difference between the two gods. The names of the gods for each culture were different. The sun god for the Mayans was Kinichahau, and the Incas was Inti, also called Apu Pinchua. The moon god for the Mayans is Ixchel, and the Incas was Mama Kia. The rain god for the Mayans is Chak, and the Incas is Iyapa. The corn god for the Mayans is Kumkax, and the remaining gods were only in relation to the Incas. The god of weather or thunder is Patikil. The stars god is Chaska or Venus. The earth god is Pakakamak. And the sea god was Mama Kocha. Now the second significant similarity between the two is their architecture. They would build beautiful temples, stadiums, and pyramids. For example, the Mayans would build stadiums where human sacrifices would take place, and ball games such as Pocatoc, which symbolized the human struggles in their lives. The Mayans believed the pyramids were sacred mountains to the heavens, otherwise known as Tamanchuan. Now, one example of a pyramid is Chichen Itza, carved with beautiful hieroglyphics. And it's been said, at sunrise and sunset, on the spring and fall, equinoxes on the corner of the pyramid cast a shadow of Kukulkan, a feathered serpent god, creating the illusion of a snake slithering down the north side with the sun's movement. There seems to be a carving of a serpent. Another example of their architecture is the multi-room palaces with vaulted ceilings. According to an article by Guy Gigliotta written in August 2007 in National Geographic, by 378, Waka was a prestigious center boasting 4 main plazas, hundreds of buildings, temple mounds up to 300 feet tall, ceremonial palaces and painted stucco, in courtyards graced with carved limestone altars and monuments. Comparably, the Incas were just as skillful at building beautiful structures. They built structures by carefully placing cut-fitting stones together without mortar. One example is how the planners laid the city out in the shape of a giant puma, a mountain lion. Boulet et al., the authors of The Earth and Its Peoples, A Global History, describes the richest was the Temple of the Sun, its interior lined with sheets of gold, and its patio decorated with golden representations of llama and corn. Another example of the Incas' architecture is Machu Picchu. History.com describes it as the site's finely crafted stonework, terraced fields, and sophisticated irrigation system bear witness to the Inca civilization, architectural, agricultural, and engineering prowess. Some items you'll find within Machu Picchu is a farming area, a sacred area, a community neighborhood, and the Temple of the Sun. Now, in contrast, there were some differences between the two cultures, such as geography, timeline, agriculture, and technology. In regards to geography, both cultures were located in different civilizations. The Mayans were part of the Mesoamerica civilization, located in the tropical lowlands of the Yucatan Peninsula, in the states of Mexico, such as Tabasco and Chiapas, Guatemala, and Belize. During the classic timeline is when they were around between 250 and 950 CE. Now, the Incas were located in the Andes region, known as the Andean civilization. Now, according to History.com, it spanned the distance of northern Ecuador to central Chile and consisted of 12 million inhabitants from more than 100 different ethnic groups at its peak. The Inca timeline was part of the post-classic period from the 1430s to 1525. Let's go ahead and take a look at the second visual aid that shows the different timelines. As you can see, I do have them in two different colors. Green is for the Mayans and yellow is for the Incas. Now, in 250 is when the Mayan early classic period began. In CA 750, Tenochtitlan was destroyed, and between 800 and 900, Maya centers were abandoned. After some time has passed, in 1430s, Incas expansions began. In 1465, Incas conquered Shimu, and in 1500 to 1525, Incas conquered Ecuador. Now, as a result, in the difference in geography, there was a difference in agriculture between the two. For example, the Mayans would drain swamps and build elevated fields. They used irrigation in areas with long dry seasons, and they terraced hillsides and cooler highlands. In addition, Bouliet et al., the authors of The Earth and Its People, A Global History, explains how the Mayan agriculturists maintained nearby forests and promoted the growth of trees and shrubs that were most beneficial to them. In addition, they promoted the conservation of deer and other animals that hunted for food. Whereas the Incas, they were in a mountainous geography where terrain and climate were both major hurdles that they'd have to overcome. And Columbia Encyclopedia explains to overcome them, Inca engineers demonstrated extraordinary skill in terracing, drainage, irrigation, and the use of fertilizers. Now, one significant difference between the two cultures and their agricultural techniques was the need for the Incas to learn how to harvest food at different levels of altitudes to lessen the risks of frosts. Another skill that they had to learn was how to freeze dry their food in preparation for those bad crops. Now, they accomplished the freeze drying by leaving the food out to freeze, stomping on their food until most of the water is out of it, and then letting it sit in the sun to finish drying. Now, this was required to prevent starvation when the crops wouldn't produce. Now, the last difference I'd like to point out is technology. The Mayans were able to read and write. They used hieroglyphic inscriptions, which represents the whole words, concepts, as well as phonetic cues or syllables. And they also incorporated the digit 0 in regards to math. In contrast, the Incas didn't have a written language. Instead, according to History.com, a form of Quichua became the primary dialect, and knotted cords known as quipus were used to keep track of historical and accounting records. So, why do these two cultures have similarities and differences between them? Well, in regards to the religious beliefs and practices along with the architecture, I believe they were linked to the desire or the need to believe in something higher than themselves. For example, the Mayans, they practiced human sacrifice, and their belief that it's done as an honor to sacrifice one's life so they can travel to Tamanchuan to meet the gods. Regarding the differences between the culture and their agriculture, well, that's a result of geography. The Mayans lived in the tropical lowlands with humid climates, and the Incas lived in the high hilltops of the Andes Mountains with unpredictable climates. Therefore, the Mayans and Incas crops grew different. The Mayans would grow corn, which is what they were famous for, and the Incas were famous for the potatoes. That was due to the fact that it was able to survive the heavy frosts. Now, both cultures have impacted our society in many ways. The biggest impact that the Mayans had on a modern society is the creation of mathematics, astronomy, and writing. As a result, in the Mayans' interest in math and the stars, it helped with the current calendar we use today. Without the Mayans' desire and importance on time, we may still be using cayups for record keeping like the Incas did in the past. Now, Puget et al., the authors of Earth and Its Peoples, A Global History, says it best. It contributed to the foundations for both the calendars and the astronomical observations on which they were based. The Incas' contribution in modern society is the irrigation techniques, specifically the terrace farming and the freeze-dried foods. We find terrace farming in other parts of the world today, such as Japan, China, and other areas of the Mediterranean. Let's go ahead and recap on what's been discussed today. Please refer to your last visual aid, the Venn diagram, which shows the similarities and differences between the two cultures. In the middle, we see that the similarities are the religious beliefs, human sacrifices, architecture, social structure, and material culture. Now, in regards to the differences, for geography, the Incas were in the Andes region and the Mayans were in the tropical lowlands of the Yucatan Peninsula. In regards to timeline, the Incas were the post-classic period from 1430s to 1525, and the Mayans had the classic period from 250 to 900. In regards to agriculture, Incas' agriculture was terrace farming and freeze-drying of foods. The Mayans' agriculture was draining swamps and building elevated fields. And lastly is our technology. The Incas didn't have a writing. They spoke a dialect called Quichua, and they used quipus, or knotted cords, for record keeping. And the Mayans had the hieroglyphics for writing, they had the calendar, and they had the digit 0 for math. So as you can see, today we benefit from both cultures, and each of them have impacted modern society through both technology and agriculture. Thank you.